Our next guest has spoken one-on-one with Olympic athletes during the Games and, like a sort of spiritual trainer, has heard their heartfelt needs. Reverend David Wells has been a chaplain at several Olympic Games and was chair of the Multi-Faith Committee at the Vancouver Games. He is also the General Superintendent of the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada. David Wells, welcome to Context.
Thank you, Attorney.
Thanks for being here. So you've been right in the heart of the Olympics. What is it that athletes are coming to you for as a chaplain?
Well, athletes live in such a bubble, especially in the intensity leading up to the games themselves. And the Olympics is wise enough to recognize that athletes are whole people. They are physical, certainly, and they have emotions, but they're also spiritual beings. So it's leading up to the Olympics, and then in the Olympics, it's an opportunity to help to come alongside of athletes and deal with them as a whole person.
Do they know how to be a whole person? They're so performance-driven, they're so competitive. You know, how do they view themselves? How do they view the people around them?
Well, in counseling athletes, I mean, that's one of the great challenges is when they've built so much around their performance and their lives have revolved so much about being an athlete, and yet they're dealing with things that are deeper and things that are wider, and they deal with what their future looks like. And so some of them, they just focus in on the event and they do as well as they can do. But others are beginning to ask questions, and they come and they chat and we interact about who they are as a person and what they'll become even after the games. Some athletes are coming from, they are people of faith, and their faith is very important to them, and so they're looking to be supported, they're looking to worship, they're looking to have opportunities to pray, so you're able to come alongside of them and do that. Others hit a particular crisis point. I've walked with several athletes through times of bereavement right in the middle of the games. What do you do if you're a synchro swimmer in pairs and your dad's just passed away in Vancouver? And now if you head back home, you are leaving your partner without the chance to compete for a medal. And I'm the one that those people come to, along with the team, of course, but we interact and we ask God for wisdom and support people all the way through the games. And then there are those macro situations where you're given opportunity to respond when huge crisis occurs.
I know that in the Vancouver Games, someone passed away. Their Olympians die on their pursuit. So how do you deal specifically with that loss so close to home? Not someone far away, not a family member, but an actual Olympian.
Yeah, picture with me. For 7 years, I had been preparing to serve the Vancouver Organizing Committee in chaplaincy, and as it evolved, I ended up being the head of the Interfaith Committee that planned for the multi-faith centers. So for 7 years, you've been praying and working to be the supportive person when the games come. Everything's been building to February 12th, 2010. That date is rooted in your heart and mind. And then one of the vice presidents pulls me aside and said, "David, we need you like we've never needed you before. We just got word that he's gone." I didn't even know the context he was referring to. And of course, it was the tragic death of the Georgian luger. Well, I had a clear sense, presence of God, that for 7 years, this is what God had prepared me and the team for. To be there alongside of the athletes, the team officials. That is why we were there. And close to 800 came through our faith centers over the next few days. And it all came down to one moment on a Friday evening just before the games wrapped up. I was up in the Whistler Village. We were having a chapel time, and a woman luger from one of the European countries was there with one of our chaplains, and she was a close friend, and she was devastated. And we'd had our chapel time together, and then we had said the Lord's Prayer together. And with tears streaming down her eyes, she looked at her friend, and she said, "Now, could we say that in German?" And it's because God had opened the door for me to be there to serve and invite this gentleman who I knew loved athletes and was able to serve them, that in that moment, that woman was cared for in the way that she needed to be cared for, that went far beyond her performance, went far beyond her being a public figure. And to be able to hear my friend lead in the Lord's Prayer in German and know for 7 years, this is what God had put in my heart, so that we would have that moment. I tell you, there's nothing more meaningful than being God's person in the right place at the right time.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, David. Let's go back to Sheldon Neal, who has another question from our audience. Who have you got with you today?
That is right, Eternia. And I have not just any audience member with me. I actually have David Lee, who is a member and player for the Toronto Argonauts, defensive end, and also 2012 Grey Cup champions. That deserves a round of applause. I mean, we're coast to coast here at Context, but go Toronto. That's right, I said it. He has an audience question. Go right ahead.
I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for everything that you do. As an athlete, I know we can sometimes live in a bubble, and sometimes it's hard to get out to church, you know, the athletic schedule. And you guys really do a great job as chaplains of bringing church to us. And I just want to ask you, what inspired you to pour out so much of your life into athletes specifically?
Well, the first answer isn't overly spiritual. My wife says that if there's two kids playing in a mud puddle and they call it sports, I'll watch it. So, yeah. So in honesty, it's this great convergence of this, you know, love for God and love to be able to share His love with people, meeting with this great love for sports and sports people. And, you know, God lets us have those sweet spots in our lives many times. Where your passions are able to meet. And I love serving sports people. I'm looking forward to serving our Canadian athletes at the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow and then being back here at the Pan Ams in Toronto. And whether it's through bereavement or victory or just to have a nice worship time with friends from around the world, I'm ready for it, man.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave, for that question. And I see the ring there, championship ring. Looks nice, my friend. We do have a question for you at home, and it is this. Does the Olympic medal count matter to you? Are the games about winning, or are they about personalities and stories? It's easy to join the conversation, so please send us your responses by phone, email, Facebook, or Twitter.
Coming up, Olympian Sarah Bonikowski and Olympic champion Katrina LeMaidon on how to balance faith with Olympic ambition. Stay right here.